Good evening, everyone. We are about to begin. So thank you for everyone joining us live on Facebook and joining us in the Zoom webinar. So we're just letting some people come in. We had a little bit of a late start. So we are going to begin here momentarily. So I'm going to share my screen again and we will get rocking and rolling. That up for everybody. Right. Hopefully y'all can see that. We got some people coming in right now. We got some people on the live stream. We're ready to go. Okay. Make sure we're good here. All right. All right. So welcome everybody to our weekly live stream. Welcome back to the channel, Athletes in AP History. Again, my name is Joe Sebastian. Get to that in a second. Tonight's topic is going to be the LEQ Secrets, or the long essay question. This is actually part 3 of the past 3 weeks. We've been going through the FRQs for all the AP history exams. We started with the DBQ. Last week we talked about the SAQ, and tonight we're going to round it out and talk about the LEQ and what are some secrets. So if you're new to the channel, we help student athletes score 5s on their AP exams so they can earn college credit without spending unnecessary time studying. And we are on a mission to help student athletes master their AP history exams, but not just AP history, AP government, and AP human geography as well. Again, my name is Dr. Joe Sebastian. I am a lifelong learner, but also an educational leader as a principal for a high school, but I previously was a history teacher, and I currently coach and tutor the various subjects I just mentioned in AP histories, Euro, American history and government, and of course, American history, government, world history, and human geography. So one of the sayings we've been kind of coming back to is, if we aren't teaching it, our kids aren't learning it. And unfortunately, there is a lot of skills being left out of these classrooms, these very vital classrooms of our AP curriculum, where our students aren't being taught the proper skills on how to master these exams. So that's kind of what we talk about each and every week. Tonight, we're going to focus on the LEQ secrets. It is a complicated essay that can be very easily broken down. And we're going to kind of talk about how the scoring goes and what the rubric looks like, and then how to best answer these exams. So for our first-time attendees, for our repeats, understand that we're going to focus on the 3 history exams today. We'll probably leave some time next couple of weeks to talk about the government and human geography exams. But for the 3 AP history exams, understand that 40% of your score comes from stimulus-based multiple choice questions. What does that mean? That means that the multiple choice questions have some kind of stimulus, whether it be a picture, a quote, a secondary or primary source, and the questions are asking you to analyze or explain something or come to some conclusions. So it is not rote memorization. It is much higher level than that. So if you're only practicing memorization of these questions, you're not going to be ready for the exam. The exam is much more rigorous than that. But getting a good score is only 40% of the way there. So you can do really well in the multiple choice questions, but if you don't do well in the essays, you're not going to get the score you so desire, because 60% of the exam comes from the free response questions. And again, that is the SAQ, the DBQ, and the LEQ, often referred to as the free response questions, or FRQs. So here's how the score breaks down. 20% come from 3 SAQ questions, 25% of your score comes from the DBQ, and 15% of your score comes from 1 LEQ question, of which you will have 3 options to choose from, and you will have 40 minutes to write it. So one big thing we're going to kind of remind you of is investing the time now to benefit later. You need to prepare for these exams. One, you get college credit. You get almost the equivalent of free college credit out of getting a good score on these exams. Some accept 3s, but we're looking at 4s and 5s. If you do nothing to prepare, just be prepared to fail, because you got to go above and beyond. Think about this. If only 10% get 5s and 15% get 4s, what are you doing differently than the 25% of other students out there? Or sorry, the 75% of other students out there, right? So you got to think of, how can you better prepare than anyone else? How can you outwork? And one of those things is you have to put some time in outside of your class. Okay, so that's a big thing. Number 2 is the LEQ. Let's talk about the LEQ breakdown. So you need to get all of your points for the LEQ every time. And the secret number 1 that we're going to talk about is using APEC. What is APEC? APEC stands for Assertion, Proof, Explanation, Connection. It is a good writing formula that we break down in our presentation here, but we use the rubric to kind of guide us. So as I said in the beginning, the LEQ is worth a total of 6 possible points. You get a point for your thesis. So a thesis has to respond to the question with a historically defensible claim that establishes a line of reasoning. So if you don't have those elements in there, you're not going to get the point. But usually most students can understand how to get a basic thesis. So that's step 1. Step 2, to get another point, is contextualization. This can be done fairly easy by describing the broader historical context relevant to the prompt. How I teach students to do this is, after you form your thesis and you get your thesis down, leave a couple spaces and you're going to put your context, basically the background information leading up to that question, in there. That's an easy way to get 2 points right there. So a point for context, a point for your thesis. Now, the meat of your points will come from evidence and analysis and reasoning. According to the AP rubric, you only need to have 2, or you need to have specific examples of evidence. Must identify at least 2 specific historical examples. Does that mean if only I put 2 pieces of facts in my essay, I'll get all the points? Not necessarily. I say you want to include more than 2, but 2 is the minimum that'll accept to get you the 2 points. The way I teach you is you're going to load up on your evidence so you don't miss the points there. Okay, so right now, if you got your thesis, your context, and 2 pieces of evidence that are really good, specific pieces of evidence, that's a 4 out of 6. How you get the other 2 points? Analysis and reasoning, and basically complexity. So using historical reasoning, i.e. comparison, causation, continuity, and change over time, to basically explain how this essay answers your thesis, is one point right there. The second point comes from complexity and really understanding the question. So most students can set themselves up to get a 5, but we want to try to get that 6 with a complexity point. But most of the time, you're going to get that 5 if you follow these directions. So explaining your points with analysis is a really good way to get that 5th point. And then complexity is something only 2% of students actually get on their exam. So you can still score a 5 without complexity, but just keep in mind that we're going to set ourselves up to try and get that complexity point by at least first forming a complex thesis. So looking at what the ask is for APUSH, Euro history, and world history, you're going to get a question in each one of these is an analytical question, analyze significant issue in the history. You're going to develop an argument using historical evidence, and the question focuses on one of those historical thinking skills. The difference is you have 3 options to choose from to write about. The band in U.S. history is 1491 to 1800, 1800 to 1898, or 1890 to 2001. In European history, you get 1450 to 1700, 1648 to 1940, or 1850 to 2001. And in world history, 12,000 to 750, 1450 to 900, or 1750 to 2001. let's look at an APUSH question from 2022. These are the three choices students had to answer from. Evaluate the relative importance of causes of population movement to colonial British America in the period 1617 to 1754. Evaluate the relative importance of causes of rising industrial capitalism in the US in the period from 1865 to 1900. Evaluate the relative importance of causes of internal migration with the US in the period from 1900 to 1970. So those are the three questions that APUSH asked in 2022. Here is the world history. So these are the periods circa before 1500. States in the Americas use a variety of institutions, policies, and practices to consolidate and expand their scope. Develop an argument that evaluates the extent to which one pre-Columbian state in America was successful in consolidating and centralizing its authority during this period. In the period 1450 to 1750, the global increase in transregional context led to both expansion and contraction of existing religions, as well as development of new religious practices. Develop an argument that evaluates the extent to which military conflict or conquest was the main cause of religious change in the period. In the late 20th century, the spread of free market economic ideas led to numerous changes around the world. Develop an argument that evaluates the extent to which the spread of free market ideas led to an economic change during the period. Now you see the similarities. It's develop an argument that evaluates to the extent. That is a causation question that is setting yourself up for a causation question. So we'll kind of get to that in a second. And then here's AP Euro. Evaluate the most significant similarity between the French Revolution of 1799 and the revolutions of 1848. Evaluate the most significant difference between economic development in Eastern Europe and economic development in Western and Central Europe in 1800s, and then evaluate the most significant similarity between the regimes of Nazi Germany and Soviet Russia in the interwar period. So that right there will show you what those questions look like from 2022. Okay, how do you answer these? So in the masterclass and how I teach the good writing is we're going to have to first outline our essay. So how this looks in practicum is that you're going to get a blue book to respond on your AP exam. So I kind of tell you to do this practice, write it out, so make it visible. You're not going to have this nice planner. But step one's obviously identify the question. So you put your question there. You want to identify the underline the action verb. So we want to make sure we know what the question is asking us. So for example, in a to what extent question, evaluate to what extent, that action verb is evaluation. So we're evaluating, and usually what follows in that case is the historical thinking skill of causation. So we make sure we know we're trying to ask an evaluation of causes. And so we have to align our evidence. So the main hack, if you will, or secret here is once you have the question and once you know what the question is asking you, write down all the specific pieces of evidence you know for that question. And that is the specific facts that you can name drop in your essay. So that's where you brainstorm your evidence. So on the left-hand column, I have students write down at least 5 pieces of specific evidence that they know from this time period that helps answer that question. Then I ask them, okay, each one of these pieces of evidence is important. What does this show in an argument? Now, you can write it out or you can just bullet point it out. But the whole idea here is if you actually outline this, you have now created the rough structure of your essay. Now you have to figure out what your thesis is. So that is a really good way, a really good hack of just write down all the proof you know and what does this show. And that helps you get ready for the LEQ to write it. So the next thing we do is we actually work on an outline. Now, this is all scaffolded. So the first time we do this, we walk through these steps and then we take these away as we go along because you got to be able to do this without it. But it's to make you understand the parts that are going to go into the LEQ to get all the points. So now that we have outlined some basic proof, we're going to start thinking of a thesis. Now, To avoid the inevitable writer's block that comes with these LEQs, I already tell you, make it complex so you try and get the complexity point. I do the same thing for the DBQ. So 2 complex starters that are really easy, especially when it's asking a causation question, asking you to weigh one thing over the other, are these. Although, counter argument, comma, blank, my argument. Or despite counter argument, comma, because my argument. So think of the categories that could potentially go there because of your argument. When you set yourself up for a thesis that way, you already allow yourself to potentially get that complexity point because your thesis is actually complex. You're showing that there's a nuanced understanding of history, that it's one thing over the other. So that's your thesis. You go back and write your 4 background sentences that lead up to your thesis for your contextualization. So that's 4 big pieces of evidence, or not necessarily specific, but have to do with the time period that leads yourself to that thesis. And then most of the time, your LEQ is going to be 2 body paragraphs. It can be 3, but with 40 minutes, limited amount of time, and a little bit of time to plan, I say do one reason over the other. So body paragraph 1, body paragraph 2. And this is where we go into APEC. We did a whole live stream on what APEC is and how we teach APEC in a previous live stream that I can tag anyone that's interested on later on. But so you basically split apart your thesis. If your thesis is complex and it has counter argument versus argument, then your counter argument first part of the sentence is going to go in your assertion. And you're just going to make it a declarative sentence. You're going to make it a how or why. So something blank, counter argument. And then my other part of my thesis is going to go into my assertion 2 in my other body paragraph. Now, all that evidence that we just outlined, we're now going to dump in here, and we're going to both name drop our evidence. We're going to talk about the specific things that help us answer our thesis, and we're going to explain it to our reader, explain to it how it supports the thesis. And that's basically all you have to do to get the minimum level of points. Now, if you know the topic and you can explain nuances and you can explain context, if you can go deeper and explain some root cause of this history, then you're going to set yourself up to get all 6 of the points. But this will at least get you to a 5. So that right there is how you set yourself up for 2 good body paragraphs. And if you just follow those guides, you can actually get a 5 out of 6 every time on the LEQ. Again, the complexity point is somewhat more difficult to score because it does require in-depth analysis and an in-depth understanding of the topic, but how we're setting up our thesis can get you. So when we just gave away a baseline exam a couple of weeks ago, free baseline exam to about 9 people who were interested in it initially. And as I'm working through my masterclass students right now, we're getting into the baseline season. So as they start wrapping up the review, we're going to take a multiple choice test aligned to their respective course to see where students are. So where should you be for a 5? That's a big question. So I would say this, the safe zone for multiple choice questions is the upper 40s for your AP histories. AP Human Geography is out of 60 and AP Government is out of 55, and that's a different scoring system. Because 40% of your score comes from these 55 questions, where the safe zone I would want to see my students consistently hit if they want a 5 is above 45. I usually shoot for the safe zone of 47. If you can consistently hit 47 on practice exams out of 55, you're what I call safe. In that I'm not as worried about you as long as we got the FRQs in line, because that gives you enough buffer there to play with a couple points on the FRQ. Ideally, that's, you want to be 48, 49. If you can hit those scores, that is setting yourself up great. For the other 60% of your score is the essay. So keep that in mind. And there is a formula. If you have a review book, if you have 5 steps to a 5, or if you have Princeton Review, and we use those in our course, if you have that, that gives you a formula to show you how what you would get if you're grading yourself honestly on the exam. So before I get to questions, that's basically the breakdown. Let's talk about test prep for a second. So have you considered test prep? Now, one-on-one coaching, test prep, tutoring, anything like that can help students get the consistent results they want. That's what we built one of our foundational principles on for our program, and that's how we're able to get the results we get because of the one-on-one coaching system. Because this, unlike the SAT, and a lot of people pay for SAT prep, but because of the AP history exam, because 60% of your score comes from writing, and that writing is, even though it's on a rubric, it is subject to the grader, you need to get good feedback to grow your score, to get a better score. So if you aren't considering test prep and you really want a high score, a majority of the students we have are straight A students. The majority of students I've ever tutored are A students, B students, and they want to be sure. But the main thing is you get the feedback to grow from. So we do offer an exam ready guarantee for our coaching program. And these, I showed these before, just how that inception came out of. This was the first year we ran the master class. All of our students got a 4 or 5 that took it and completed the entire course. And why does it work so well? How does it work so well? Well, we focus on a comprehensive review. So we're going to review all the units of study in your AP history course. We're going to review all the FRQs, similar to what we did now, but we're going to go in detail. We're going to give feedback and give instruction on how to actually put this in action and what this looks like in action. Of course, we're going to do timed essays and exams. It's all well and good to know how to do the LEQ. If you can't do it in the time limit in 40 minutes, there's no point. You have to be able to do it under 40 minutes and deliver the results consistently to get that score. Because like I said, if you get to that 47 safe zone, now can I do all my essays in the time limit? And with the course comes the personalized feedback, the one-on-one coaching. It is fully flexible and built around your schedule with our scheduling on demand system. And the biggest thing of all is the accountability. You're going to get an accountability partner to help you make sure you stay on track to get you where you need to be. And right now, because we're now over 1,100 members tonight, we have a big limited time promotion that's going to end at the end of this, at the end of midnight tonight. So if you have a chance and want to book a call to lock in that promotional deal and just learn about the program a little bit more, go ahead and get on our schedule. I could send you the link if you're interested for the action call, or you can comment 5 in the links below. If you would like a copy of our LEQ guide tonight that we talked through, I will share that for anyone still watching. Just either comment LEQ on the Facebook Live, or send me a message on Facebook and I'll get that over to you. Here are the current masterclass offerings that we offer for our students from the AP Histories, AP Human Geography, and AP Government. And I will pause there for a second. If anyone's still on the line wants to ask a question, go right ahead and we will wrap up. Anyone on the Zoom webinar want to ask a question? Go ahead and raise your hand or put it in the chat. The question Q&A is live also. Hopefully this was helpful tonight. Any questions? All right, so I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Hope to see you back next week. We'll see what our topic is going to be then. Thank you for supporting the channel. And Kelly, I'll get you the LEQ, absolutely. Thank you all for the support. It's 7 weeks to go. Now is the time to get focused and make sure we're hammering down a review plan. Thank you all and good night.